Today I'm going to be predicting every single U.S. Senate race. We'll start out with the likely red and go alternate until we get to the tilt states. We'll start with the state of Mississippi, which I'm fairly certain will end up in the likely red column, may even be safe. For now, we're going to go with likely. Got a comment from one of you guys a while back that the state might be more competitive than a safe margin for the Republicans. Ultimately, it's still a seat in the Republican Party's column, so that will be the call there for the state of Mississippi. Heading now over to South Carolina, going to put the same call for that state. The state is generally a little more competitive than Mississippi is, but it's still generally in the safe, reliably Republican column. But now it is going into the likely red column. So slight change there. Heading now over to the state of Kansas. This one is generally in the safe red column as well. The Kansas City metropolitan area is kind of the driving force of Democratic momentum. I don't think it's enough to narrow up the state past likely. But for now, that will be the call there in the state of Kansas. Heading now to the state of Montana. There's going to be, as you notice, there's been quite a few in the likely red column. This one is generally also in the safe red. However, there is no Republican incumbent this time around for the Senate position there. And because of that, I think Democrats have a slight edge. But I do think at the end of the day, it'll still be a Republican victory. That will be the call there in the state of Montana. Trying to think if we do. We have another in the state of Florida. Going to put that into the likely red margin. If things continue to go well for Democrats, I could potentially see them ending up in the lean margin. I think it would take quite a bit, but it might be a possibility. For now, though, I think the most likely scenario is that the state goes likely red. And that should be the end of the likely red states. Heading now to the likely blue. We have the state of Minnesota, and I think that may be the only one. I've gone back and forth on New Hampshire of whether it'll be likely or lean Dem, but for now I'm going to go with, we'll get to it. We'll go with lean for that state, but we're going to now go to the lean Republican states. For that, we're going to start with, well, there is one more. The state of Nebraska, I'm going to kind of jump to that one. I originally had it in the lean column during last prediction, but things have gone well. The polling is looking actually pretty good for Dan Osborne. I don't quite think it'll be enough to necessarily secure a Senate seat there for an independent, but he did significantly outperform Harris in 2024. And I think if he can do that, he has a good shot in an environment that is shaping up to be quite a bit better for Democrats. He is not necessarily, by party identification, Dan Osborne is not a Democrat, but he is virtually the de facto Democratic candidate. He's spoken against the Big Beautiful Bill that the Republicans passed a little while ago, as well as some other key Republican pieces of legislation. And he, like I said, he's an independent, but he's championed kind of messaging across the political spectrum, and I think that he will do well enough. So I'm going to move this from lean red to tilt red. That will be the call there in the state of Nebraska. Going now to the lean blue seats, hinted at this one earlier. The one I feel the most confident is going to be the state of New Hampshire. Going to put that into the lean blue column. The state generally votes blue on the presidential level. It went blue in 2024, along with Minnesota. It was by a relatively narrow margin, though, so that concerned Democrats. But for now, I think that state will go in the lean blue column. The state I feel the next most confident in calling would probably be the state of Georgia. Georgia, this is Jon Ossoff's seat, incumbent Democratic senator defending home turf, and I think that he will be able to do well enough to win this race by a margin more considerable than tilt, which is why I'm going to put it into the lean blue column. Could end up being tilt. Georgia is definitely a swing state, so it will be close regardless of who the candidates are. I think Jon Ossoff is a strong candidate on the Democratic side, and it will be interesting to see what happens in that race. But for now, that will be the call there in the state of Georgia. Heading up now to the state of North Carolina. This one will actually be the first flip of the prediction of a state going from red to blue. That will be the current Republican senator, Thom Tillis, is retiring. He's been in the news quite a bit and kind of standing up to the second Trump administration term. And for now, I think the state will most likely go blue. Roy Cooper, former Democratic governor, is a very strong contender for this seat. I think he will do well. And for now, that will be the call there in the state of North Carolina. Heading up now, I think we will head over to the state of Maine. Going to put that one into the lean blue column. This will be the second flip, resulting in a seat going from red to blue. In this case, Susan Collins' seat. We just see fewer and fewer states with senators from opposing political parties as polarization has increased, and that has resulted in Republicans losing seats in what are now considered fairly reliably Democratic states and counties and whatnot, and then as well as Democrats losing seats in reliably Republican. It's gone both ways, but for now, I think that the most likely outcome for Maine will be the lean that the state generally has towards the Democrats, and will elect a Democrat by a lean margin. Now we get to the 4 toss-up competitive states that are really going to determine the Senate control. We'll start with these, we'll alternate, we'll go back and forth between tilt red and tilt blue. There is one state, the state of Texas. I wanted to take a look at the betting markets map for. We can do that now. So this, we'll call Texas later, but I thought this was particularly interesting. So earlier in the race, James Tallarico certainly has been doing well. I mean, 40% in July is really good for a Democrat in the state of Texas. We've seen things narrow up pretty consistently. Now he is really within a 50-50 chance. Currently, it's 48.7 to 51.3. So Ken Paxton does have the slight edge, but the momentum has been increasing for Tallarico. So he could potentially end up winning the race. For now, I think the most likely scenario is that the state goes red, but I could be proved wrong. We'll have to see what ends up happening. I think he will beat Tallarico as a strong nominee. He's definitely appealed to people across the political spectrum, and that will be definitely necessary to win over quite a few of those Republican votes that make Texas generally fairly reliably Republican. But I think that Tallarico has a strong chance, and I think it's virtually 50-50. These tilt states really could go either way, but for now, that will be the call there in the state of Texas. Another state that I am narrowing up, in this case for the Democrats, we have the state of Michigan, where the Democratic primary was being held. This resulted in the more DSA-aligned candidate for the Senate level winning the primary, and I think that that will potentially be partially to Democrats' disadvantage. I think that generally more progressive and more far right, both ways, figures tend to not do well in swing states, and I think that he will probably do well enough to win the race, but I no longer think it will be by a lean blue margin. For now, I'm going to keep it into the tilt blue column. But Democrats really need Michigan if they have a chance at winning the Senate. Now we're going to head over to the state of Alaska, which I am going to put into the tilt blue column. And then this state, Mary Peltola, pretty strong Democratic nominee. I think she'll do well. Nothing much. I know you guys have heard my thoughts on that state for quite a bit now. And then we're going to go to Iowa. I got a comment from one of you guys that the state may be a closer race than I am predicting. I do think it will be close. I currently have it into the tilt red margin, so it really could be going either way. The polling seems to back me up on this, that Republicans are largely favored to win the Senate race in Iowa, while Democrats are favored to win the gubernatorial race. Could be proved wrong, but the polls, and I think the betting markets last I checked, agree with me on that one. And then we have the state of Ohio, which I will put into the tilt blue column. So ultimately, this ends up being the same outcome, 51 to 49. However, a couple states have changed ratings or designations, calling. And for now, though, that will be the call, 51 to 49. I wanted to take, so this is my prediction. Now we can reset this map. This is the generic ballot, or this is the generic polling. Has Republicans at 49 to Democrats 47, with these 4 states being the true toss-up. But one map that I wanted to take a particularly good look at was this is the Kalshi markets. We looked at the Kalshi market for the state of Texas. That one also, this largely agrees with my prediction, having Georgia, North Carolina, fairly reliably blue, as well as Maine and Michigan going blue by less extensive of a margin, with the states of Alaska, Texas, and Ohio really being the bellwether states that will determine which party controls the Senate. So largely the betting markets, prediction markets tend to agree with my prediction. We'll have to see what ends up happening though. But yeah, always don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.